2, 1.
Good evening, everyone. So nice to have such a full room in here tonight. I would like to call the January 18th, 2024 meeting of the Croton Harmon School Board to order and recommended action that the Board of Education approves the agenda. So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, we'll now move into new business. Recommended action, be it resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, hereby appoints Christine Drago as Administrator, Director of Health, Wellness, Physical Education, and Athletics tenure area at a salary of $165,000. Ms. Drago is appointed to a 4-year probationary term as Director of Health, Wellness, Physical Education, and Athletics, commencing on July 1st, 2024, and a probationary term ending on June 30th, 2028. Ms. Drago has professional certification in physical education and school district leader.
So moved.
Second. All right, and before we take a vote, I'm going to turn it over briefly to Superintendent Walker, who'd like to say a few
Thank you,
words.
Sarah. Good evening, everybody. Good evening to all Tigers who are here in person and watching at home. This is a special night for a few reasons, but one of the things I was reflecting on tonight was as we started the year together as a family, as a team, in the auditorium, one of the things that we talked about was the idea of catching lightning in a pond, right? And the idea of having the right people in the right place at the right time, doing the right work, for the right reasons. And there's amazing opportunity in that. And there's also responsibility in that for us, and that we have to tend to that. We have to nurture that. We have to cherish that. And one of the ways that we do that is by being incredibly selective about the people that we invite to join this work, right? And I think we all know it's been a bit of a journey, an odyssey for the district with this position. And Bill, who happens to be here tonight, I want to thank you, sir, for coming in and reinvigorating and re-energizing the program and the work. And I think part of your legacy, in addition to everything you've done so far, is going to be in this young lady, in Christine. Because I've been doing this work a long time. And maybe the only thing I do well is to identify people who are going to be really great at what they do. And there's something about you that makes me incredibly confident that you're going to be great, not just good, but great here for a long, long time. And you took an opportunity to work alongside Bill and made it into an advantage for you, such that we decided we didn't want to go through another search because we already have our person, right? And you convinced us of that with your vision, with your commitment, with your talent, with your understanding of teaching and learning, and your genuine dedication to doing this work, but most importantly for us to doing it here, right? To catching lightning in a bottle with us here. So welcome to the family. Welcome to the Tigers.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. Congratulations.
You don't have to say anything.
You're all great. We will.
And congratulations and thank you to your whole family who's here.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us. We're gonna move on to our consent agenda and other items, so.
You're more than welcome to stay if you like, but also.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congrats.
Great. We will now move into our consent agenda. Recommended action, the Board of Education approves all items on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
On the question?
So I did have a couple of questions. I'm sorry I got to a little bit late today, but I just wanted to ask about the co-curricular club applications. There's a couple of them for critical friends groups at both PBC and CHHS. And I noticed that typically on these forms, we see something about the number of students impacted, but I didn't see that on these. So I'd like to better understand how these co-curricular clubs work and what the benefit to students is.
So when it comes to co-curricular, there are actually two kinds of resolutions. Ones are for club applications and other for recommendations. Recommendations are become for personnel, and these are actually on that side. And point well taken, this is really something that falls under the category of old habits where these roles were identified under a co-curricular stipend. Anna, you're correct. They're really not co-curricular appointments and that they're not advisors of clubs. They would really fall more under the category, we're talking about national board certification as a new position, but certainly with Critical Friends as being more instructional support stipends for teachers. So if the board would like to amend it from a co-curricular recommendation to a instructional support stipend, that would be probably more appropriate.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Does that, I assume that has like a budgetary impact if that's getting switched over in that way or characterized differently?
The budgeting wouldn't change it. It's appropriately allocated under the proper codes.
Okay. I think that answers my question. Thank you.
Alright, so, I will move to amend, 3.5 on the consent agenda to, from co-curricular recommendations to instructional support stipends. So that would then read, the Board of Education approves the 2023-2024 instructional support stipend appointments as presented. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
Alright. All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain? Motion carries. All right, now back then to the full consent agenda. On the question, any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain? Motion carries. All right, so now we will move into our main event, and the reason so many of you are joining us this evening. And we will begin our work session. Our first work session topic of two this evening will be the equity stakeholder recommendations and the work that has been ongoing in the district. So I will turn that over to Superintendent Walker.
Thank you again, Sarah. I want to say thank you to all of the team members who are here and so many others who are doing this work with such great passion and inspiration. I just wanted to begin by saying that when we talk about what school can be and the vision map, one of the ways that we talk about it is as a promise to our community, right? As a commitment to our community about what the potential of what school can be, what it can offer in terms of opportunities and lifting all students, right? And so for me, when we think about the concept of equity, we're thinking about delivering on that promise, making that promise real to every member of our school district community, to every student, to every staff member, every adult and visitor to our schools. And that's an incredibly important and aspirational vision for what public education can be, not just here, but anywhere. And what I think the board's going to hear and have the opportunity to engage in tonight is evidence of that work, right? And evidence of delivering on that promise. And I know I'm incredibly proud to be a part of the team that's doing this. So we'll turn it over to Michael, who's gonna start with one of our introductory slides.
Great, so these are some of the questions that we want you to ponder prior to our presentation and talk this evening. Are there things you'd like to know more about? Are there experiences you'd like to see firsthand? What do you see as areas of strength and areas in need of further consideration? So as we go through the presentation tonight, please keep those in mind as we make progress through our talk. Also, we'll be coming back to those questions at the end to revisit them and give them proper consideration.
So just to start off this presentation, we thought it would be beneficial to really take our brains back to where this work started. In many ways, I think a lot of people would think that this era of thinking about equity might go back to at least to 2017, when we saw white supremacist violence in Charlottesville. Certainly, it was brought to a more local level in July of 2018, where our district saw the posting of neo-Nazi posters outside of our high school. 2020, as we know, was a very, very big year in our country, with the killing of Breonna Taylor in March, with the murder of George Floyd in May, and a summer of 2020 that led to a tremendous amount of civil unrest in our country. And when we came back to school to begin the 2021 school year, there was a call to how our district was going to respond to everything we were seeing on the national landscape. And we decided we wanted to get together in October of 2020 for a community conversation. We, as a board and administration, realized that we wanted some help in facilitating that conversation. And we called upon the NYU Metro Center and Natalie Zwerger, the director of that center at the time, to facilitate that conversation. And it was a good conversation. And it was a conversation that led us to understand that there were things that we needed to address locally to really be everything that we wanted to be. And it was through that conversation that the equity stakeholder team was formed. And at that time, we decided to continue using the NYU Metro Center. And as that group was doing with a lot of other districts at the time, they were really looking at districts as current existing systems. And within those systems, what can be added to that system to create more equitable structures? And as we look at how that group and other group interface with districts, we saw a very, very common approach that we fell in line with in terms of what are those structures, whether they were curriculum reviews or equity committees, or a lot of things sort of layered on top of what was already happening. But then since that, in the years since that, as you look at our timeline and moving to 22 and 23, we started to take a look at strategic planning for our next strategic plan and ultimately the formulation of our vision map. And one of the philosophical changes in approach that really started to happen and verbally was articulated was that rather than taking existing structures and adding on top of those structures things to address equity, really the substantial change is only going to happen by actually looking at the structures themselves and changing those structures to make sure that we are achieving an equitable experience for every single human being within our system. So the analogy that we're using is that of going to a kitchen and doing some baking. And let's say we want to make a layer cake. And the layer cake we're making is actually quite bland and stale. So what we decide to do to jazz up this dessert is we add more layers to it. We add the icing, we add the filling. That in many ways, as we started to analyze what the original recommendations, it felt a little bit like adding on top. And really what you're going to hear tonight may feel like a departure in some ways from some of the recommendations that were made by the equity stakeholder team, because there's an effort to say that what we need to do as a district is not add more layers to what we were already doing, but actually change the nature of what we're doing. Take the actual batter of the cake and make sure the ingredients and what is in the batter itself at the foundation ensures equity for everyone and assures that through those substantive changes of what school can be, we are really achieving the aims of this work. So what you're going to be hearing tonight is really getting into that effort through our vision map.
Can I just say, if you had a wager on whether or not we were gonna use an image of a cake during the equity stakeholder team presentation, you'd be a winner.
Anybody?
I'm hungry now.
There, it has my attention. I wanted to just take this opportunity when I know we may have more sets of eyes engaged with this presentation than we have on other occasions, to encourage people to take a look at the vision map on the website. And obviously, as John said, equity, inclusion, belonging, and making sure that every member of the system sees themselves, their interests, their passions, and what drives them to be better humans in their school experience is a foundational part of what our vision for what school can be is based in. And so to understand the vision map, to to have read it, to have reviewed it, to begin to live it is, in my opinion, foundational to everything that we're trying to do here and will continue to try to do in the future. So that's readily available on our website, and certainly if anybody wants to engage in some conversation around it, I'd be more than happy to meet with you to discuss further. So please take a moment. To me, that's a 6-page document. That's about the next 60 years of what school can be in this and any public school system. So please take a look at that when you have an opportunity. And within it, we make reference regularly to 3 foundational goals, right? The pursuit of passion and exploration for every member of the system, reimagining schooling. To me, this is a part of when John talks about cake batter, words I didn't think I'd be saying. When John talks about cake batter, this is what I envision that we're talking about, right? The systemic barriers that have been in place in schools for so long that are foundationally and fundamentally inequitable. Part of what school can be is to address those, attack those, dismantle those, and then rebuild them in ways that are the best for all kids, for all learners, for all adults. And within that, to establish and nurture a culture of well-being. And so I ask us just to think about how those goals are positioned to advance, hopefully inherently, equity work within the system, both now and going forward.
So these are the 5 lenses that we are going to present to tonight. These were the original recommendations or the areas of the recommendations from the original stakeholders. Curriculum, tonight you'll hear about how we have endeavored to create an affirming, inclusive, and welcoming environment while maintaining high expectations and rigor for every student and try to present a meaningful and connected educational experience. You will hear about climate consciousness, how our minds have changed and what we're looking at has changed to create a better awareness and to modify our culture and environment to ensure that everyone feels safe, supported, and able to learn. You'll hear about how our hiring and retention practices have been re-envisioned, and how the hiring practices have been changed to ensure that we get the best candidates and from a larger pool that is more diverse and inclusive. Tonight, you will also hear about our teachers and colleagues and how they have endeavored to engage in professional development. And they have been actively pursuing that. And I think you'll be very impressed with that piece. And last but not least, the community engagement piece, which is very important. You will hear about the efforts of our district to create and to operationalize the vision that Steve spoke about and to really create a community school and a school community where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued.
So the first area that we're going to take a dive into is the curriculum area. And you can see the full definition from the stakeholder team up on the screen. But if you go to the next slide, if we were going to kind of hone down from the equity stakeholder definition into our vision map, the way we look at curriculum here is it's really about allowing students to see themselves in their work by pursuing passions and being exposed to a wide range of curricular experiences. And the image that you see here, I think, summarizes that concept really well. It actually comes from a children's book that I am shamelessly stealing from my home school district that the elementary school sponsored as a community book read. But the concept of the big umbrella is that some people think that an umbrella is one size and there's only room for the number of people that can fit under that umbrella. But the idea behind the book is that the umbrella can grow and grow to fit everyone underneath that umbrella. And so you can, kind of liken it to the concept of, in some early conversations, particularly out in the media about some of this work, there are concerns about losing pieces of curriculum to make room for this. And the idea behind this is you expand your view of what curriculum is and what the experiences are so that everybody can have access to opportunities to pursue their passions, to see themselves represented in their work. And it grows and grows. But on the larger scale in our vision map, what that really means, and John alluded to this earlier, is that we really need to think about reframing our structures, starting over in a lot of ways by reimagining what these larger structures like courses, schedules, grading and assessment practices look like. So going back to the cake analogy, we're not adding an extra thing on, an extra period, an extra class. We're reframing, reimagining, and redoing our existing practices and really making some fundamental shifts. So you've heard a lot about things already, like dual enrollment courses, access to college credit, interdisciplinary experiences, changing the schedule. And those are the kinds of things that we're talking about with fundamental shifts. So to take a little bit of a deep dive into two examples of this. Right now, we're actually at CHHS, we're in year 2 of our Heritage Spanish Speakers course. So if you remember back to the inception of that course, we were trying to create a space to really celebrate the heritage language of some of our speakers. And the course was so successful in the first year that within weeks, we were already talking about how do we make this a 2-year sequence? How do we grow it? So right now we're in year 2 of our first round of a 2-year sequence of this course. And what's really amazing about it, besides it being a 2-year opportunity, is that it allows students to shine and grow in their literacy and their heritage language, but then they also get the option after year 1 or year 2 to continue in the advanced language courses, if that is something that they want to pursue. And then we also, as many of you know, we also spend a lot of time working on our Seal of Biliteracy program at the high school. And the Seal of Biliteracy program, I think, is a particularly amazing opportunity for our students to showcase their language abilities, not just in the languages that they learn in school. So starting last year, we really started focusing on, are there opportunities for us to help students create portfolios and earn that Seal of Biliteracy in languages that we don't teach at school? So right now we're working with students on Seal of Biliteracy portfolios in German, Polish, Norwegian, Russian, and I think those are 4 new languages. So we will be reaching out to our community probably very soon to find some other native speakers of those languages to help us with evaluations at some point. But this is sort of an example of these are examples of a couple of different ways that we are really working to highlight and value and grow our students' heritage languages. One more for me and then take a break. We also have 4 international travel experiences that are really important to us as a district. So right now we're actually gearing up for our first travel to Taiwan coming later this spring. We are also hosting our first exchange program, Spanish exchange program this spring, where students from Spain are going to be doing homestays with families in Croton. And then next spring, our students will get to travel and do homestays in Spain. And then, of course, we also have our long-standing La Rochelle French exchange program. So continuing to grow those 4 experiences for our students.
ITAD is something this board and the community has heard a lot about. I think it's important that, as we're talking about how equity is really just becoming part of a lot of structures, to really emphasize through Senora Coco's being here tonight, a little bit about how this has presented an opportunity for equity work from your experience.
First of all, I love the cake. You had me at copious amounts of ice. And I also think, Laura, they should have a program where they send the Spanish teachers to Spain for like a semester. Just to- or something like that.
Need an administrative chef.
So, ITAD has been new to the special area teachers at CET. We were asked to culminate with each other. ITAD stands for Innovative Teaching Across Disciplines. And at first, of course, when something is introduced, we're a little, oh, what do we need to do? We actually love this. I know Mrs. Horton is here also, can vouch that we love co-teaching together. And so we come together to create a curriculum for the students, and so they know they're getting ITAD, it's something different. So, last year, Marlena and I, we co-taught and we did, Latin dance and culture. And so the kids learned a little bit about, the country in which the dance originated from. They learned the map and there were short little videos about facts, about that dance or where it came from in the country itself. And then we actually went through a series of several weeks where they learned the different dances. So that was a fun activity, and the culminating activities, we had parents come in and the kids had to teach their parent, the dance. Also, right now, I am working with, Bree, our art teacher, and we are, the kids are doing in second grade, Mexican mirrors. So it does come from, the hojalata, which is a type of folk art, Mexican folk art, which is like tin art, and of course we can't use the tin with our younger students, so they are making their mirrors, and the center is a piece of aluminum foil. Another group is doing a mate painting, and so it's again, traditions and stories and history that's of paintings on bark. And so I found a wonderful video in the target language with the translating at the bottom, all in English. And so the kids can understand, they can read the English while they're listening to the Spanish, and it's taking the bark and cleaning the bark and using it to create this painting. So the students now are creating their own paintings, and they're using paper bags instead of bark to, kind of simulate what they saw on the video. And also with the older kids, they're doing a thankful or grateful tree, so it looks like a white birch. And in it, we ask that they use things that they are thankful for, but also to use what they're learning in Spanish, because this was a lesson I did with them in November around Thanksgiving time, so they have prior knowledge and prior vocabulary to then put it into their white birch tree, and so they're using English and Spanish. And so the students asked us the other day, can we use other languages? And so the next activity on top of this is to make one big class tree, because there are other students who speak multiple languages and they want to see their language on the tree. And so even though it's Spanish class, it's also world language, and we want every student to feel like they're heard. So we're going to make another tree where they can give us all the words they want to use from whatever language they speak at home or their second language that they are learning. So that's a little bit of what we're doing in ITAD to create culture. And I have to say, it's very difficult. I've been to several less world language teachers gathering together to talk about curriculum. And we all agree that teaching the culture is one of the hardest things in order to stay in the target language 98% of the time and then teach the culture. It's difficult, and some teachers do break out and speak English. So in working with other teachers, they assist me in teaching about the culture. I can do it in the target language, and they can support me by complementing with the English. And so the students are aware that there's, we're speaking multiple language. We all speak different languages, and even during the class period, some students want to teach me how to say a word in Polish or how to say a word. So I'm learning myself, which is nice. It's a nice dynamic that the kids do want to get involved and they do want to be heard.
That image of a tree is so wonderful because it just shows the representation, how wonderful it is for the curriculum to represent everybody's culture. That you feel you could see your culture in the curriculum and also grow to learn and have fun with other people's culture. And
Exactly.
that becomes a nice segue to Liz Sofronio is here, and she has done so much work with just that area with regards to literature. So we'd love to give you chances to speak to a little bit to what you're doing.
Hi, good evening, everyone. That picture right there with the fish at the Hudson River for an ITED trip just reminded me of one of my students going last year and coming back with a little fish skeleton for me. That- It's really connected in every classroom.
Let's get back on.
There we are. So our curriculum at CET really is integrated. Our core experiences that intentionally elevate students' cultures and backgrounds, mainly through literature. And I would love to highlight window and mirror books, which is a term used to represent mirrors that students can see themselves in. So literature that students can see themselves in and that they can relate to. So some texts that we've read that really stood out to my population is a story called My Brother Charlie. And it's about a sibling with autism. And we have a few students in our class who have siblings with developmental disabilities. And that was just one great experience where students could see themselves in text in a light that isn't usually highlighted. Another great book that we read that would be considered a mirror book for some of our students culturally was Amir's Picture Day, where a young student had to miss Picture Day because of Eid. And we actually had a student who had to miss a big celebration in class because of Ramadan. So just so many amazing texts that are out there that can serve as mirror books to our students of such diverse population here. And I also want to point out the accessibility of that as well. We all have wonderful classroom libraries, but we also have ClassLink, thank you, Jared, and Epic. The amount of texts that are on Epic that are so diverse and culturally responsive is really amazing, and it's at our students' fingertips. Then the opposite end would be window books, so books that students can look out and see the world that they might not be able to connect to, but is still teaching them about the world around us. So our PNW BOCES curriculum really integrates ELA and social studies, and we can do a lot with the text that we find. Reading School, for example, takes place in Chad. And then that brings me to my point of guest teachers. I think families have just been itching to get back into the classroom, especially after the pandemic, and we are certainly welcoming that. And in Croton, I'm learning more and more that the population is so diverse and the passions are so diverse and the interests and the skill sets. The people that live here bring so much to the table. And I think, as Laura said, we're kind of expanding our experiences for our students outside of the classroom by bringing these parents and family members or just members of the community in. So one father actually has a connection to sustainable farming in Kenya, which totally connects us to the story that we recently read, Reading School, about communities around the world in Africa. So he's willing to come in the spring and do some connection there. So I think that would be an amazing and meaningful collaboration and allow our students to kind of engage with the community, both here in Croton and globally, in a non-monetary way and give back in ways that is appropriate and meaningful for them. If you look at some of our pictures up here as well, we have some guest teachers that came in throughout the years of all different cultures. Here we have Matryoshka dolls. So a mother came in and taught about Russian heritage, and she brought some little dolls for us to play with, and this for the kids to take pictures with. She taught the Russian alphabet, read a story in Russian. Now all the kids are on Duolingo, trying to learn Russian to talk to each other. Same with the world language. I mean, it just opens so many doors. And then on the right, we have two Croton Harmon High School students who just came in last week for the PATH program, and they did a social emotional learning lesson with our students, again, through literature. So the literature that we have is just so rich and hits every target that we need to teach our young students.
Yeah, awesome. So I think, good evening, everybody. I think a word that everyone has used tonight is experience. And when we look at our vision map, one or two words that come to mind are honing in on the experiential gap. So I think a kind of correlation to our curriculum at the high school is the expansion of what we're currently doing. So taking traditional courses and really applying credit-bearing opportunities to those courses so that all of our learners have access to rigorous curriculum, but also setting them up for success beyond high school. So for example, when you're thinking of a traditional course like statistics or pre-calculus, now we have up to 8 courses that are duly enrolled and 2 pending approval but I think it's just a testament of the work that we've been doing and how we are trying to fit all learners under that umbrella and really gain access to recipes that we can then kind of cook whatever it is we want to make. And to that end, I think when we think about non-traditional ways to dual enrollment, we're making that happen. Whereas learners would access that when they get to college, we're now giving students the opportunity to do that within our building currently.
And I'm going to have the privilege of talking a little bit about our second bucket or goal tonight of climate consciousness and some of that work. So I'll give everyone just a moment to read a little bit about climate consciousness. And to summarize, we want all of our community members to feel safe and heard and seen, as Michael mentioned earlier. We know that learning and growing can really only happen when people feel supported, and that goes for students and adults alike. And so this has been and will continue to be a priority for us and in our work across the district. If you take a look at that next slide, part of that priority and the big piece of this work that's taking place here is this professional culture for us as a staff. And so we are prioritizing and carving out times for the things that are important to us, right? And that is allowing our staff and our students to connect and share stories. And one way of that happening are through these connection circles, which Linda and Rachel will talk a little bit more about as one way for that to happen. I think, true equity work is a personal journey. And so sharing those journeys, sharing those stories, sharing those passions, pursuing our passions, all are a really big part of that work. And so this time is carved out in our new teacher academy, in our team meetings, our department meetings, our faculty meetings, our critical friends groups, which Anamika mentioned earlier, and all the others that are listed up there. But I think it's important that we continue to make time for what's important.
Good evening, everybody. So I'd like to start by saying our current student population has been impacted both negatively and positively about the world around them. Living through a pandemic, an extreme shift in the way that they learn, the societal pressures as they increase. Those are all, areas that we as educators and a school district need to be able to focus on. So when we look at our work around equity, we look at, continuing to support all Tigers and giving them exactly what they need. When we look at these three domains, the academic, the social, and the mental health, all of that contributes to a student's ability to access their education every day. So the district has continued to develop programs, monitor supports, monitor students through their journey here as Tigers. So some of the things that I'd like to highlight, our flex programs at PBC and CHHS. We continue to refine these programs based on the needs as we see them. Every year we see a shift in the population. So we have to pivot with them so that we can make sure that we provide them with the ultimate levels of support so they're successful and supported here in school. Our school counselors facilitate, social emotional learning lessons in the classroom, and that's a tier 1 support for all students. So you're looking at the social emotional competencies that children need to be, meaningful, productive adults as they continue through life. Additionally, there's frequent conversations regarding students that have been identified at risk. So they may have some deficits or require something a little bit different or more intensive in the 3 areas identified: academic, social, and mental health. So those conversations continue to happen at the school. There's consistent monitoring for students, ensuring that the supports that are put in place are effective and making the impact that's expected. So the student has positive outcomes here in school and they enjoy being here and continue to learn and progress while they're here. So those at-risk meetings and conversations lead to more individualized supports for students. We're looking at ensuring that all students get what they need while they're here with us in school. Linda?
For some of that, also it plays into what we're doing with our passion pursuit work, and this really is like
like a little baby of mine. I feel like that Michael has been helping and Nicole has been helping me kind of like, I guess, build upon. And I think we can almost even go to the next slide because it ties right into this next part. Part of what I've been really focusing on is the restorative practices and what that means and how that looks. And as you can see, the restorative practices, the ideas within that circle, they're all really important, but I seem to be honing in on a couple. And one of them is the building the healthy relationships between educators and students. And in doing that, I've really tried to take into account what the kids have been through. And I think it kind of started a couple years ago after the pandemic and watching some of my students really struggle and not really know what to do. And we just started talking. And from that, I started looking at like classes. And then the next thing you know, I'm learning about restorative practices. And I'm like, this is amazing. And this is exactly what I really want to follow up with and go learn more about. So what it does is it really brings into play, how do we, our belief system, like what we believe is important and how do we bring that in there and how do we relate to our students and how do we get them to relate to us and how do we really dig in and get to know them? One of the first questions I was asked in a class was, who was the teacher that you remember the best? And when I had to sit and remember that teacher, like it was like eye-opening, because what did I remember about the teacher? It wasn't what they taught. It was what I felt when I worked with that teacher and how they made me feel in that classroom. And that was like eye-opening because that's really the connection that we need to have with our students. At least that's my firm belief after digging into this is how do we make those students feel? That's what they're going to remember later on. And that's really a big part of this restorative practice. And it really is a belief system. And Michael has been really great because not only is he letting, he and Nicole are letting me trial some of this stuff in my classroom, like doing some of this restorative practice work, but Michael is instituting it. We're doing it in faculty meetings now at PBC. We meet in the circle at the beginning of faculty meetings and we get to share with each other in a way that we haven't done before. So it's really interesting because there were people in the middle school that I hadn't even met yet and I knew nothing about. So we're building a community by doing this work. So it's not just the classroom community, we're building a school community. And the restorative practices, I feel like are just such an integral part of what you guys are envisioning for this school district. So I get really passionate about it. So yeah, Michael.
I also think when we go back to the vision map and we talk about well-being, this is one of the ways of fostering a culture of well-being at each of the schools. The other thing is we have a plan that, you know, obviously while we've done this with students before, we want to do it more. All right, we want more circles and more connections and affinity groups. So that's part of our advisory curriculum this year. And not only to have students do it, but to take active leadership roles in understanding these practices and carrying them out with peers.
So continuing on climate consciousness, Linda, as you've said, empowering students through connections between students and adults. Girls on the Run is a great example of that, which is a program or a club rather that was offered to 3rd and 4th grade girls at CET. And it's really just meant to empower girls and bind them in a way outside of the classroom.
And Girls Rock STEAM is a particular program that's offered annually to female students in grades 5 through 8 to obviously encourage girls to advance their studies in engineering, math, and the sciences. Ms. Finan and Mr. Signo have led, I think they had a little over 30 kids go last year, and
We need another bus.
I was gonna say, we might need a second bus this year, but definitely, you know, looking to enhance that. But our kids are attending every year for full day workshops and experiences, getting to hear from keynote speakers who are involved. It's been a great experience. We've gotten great feedback on that, and we're looking forward to it this year.
Yeah, and Women's Empowerment is a club that is actively running at our high school. Carrie Tracy is the advisor, and it really allows all of our girls to unlock their potential in whatever that means for them. That could be through trips, it could be through talks that they're doing, a guest speaker, and it's just really building a culture and a community for all girls within our building to tap and unlock their potential wherever they go. And I'll speak to it a little bit more of some of the activities that have stemmed from Women's Empowerment Club.
So as a lot of us are aware, the district has been affiliated with many groups since we started this work with the stakeholders group. Some of those groups include My Sister's Place, Hope's Door, the Lorraine Hansberry Remembrance Project, Glisten, Holocaust Human Rights and Educational Center, and Center Lane. One of the other groups that we've worked with in the past and continue our collaborative relationship with is the Anti-Defamation League's No Place for Hate campaign. So this went on in the 3 schools. And basically, this was an effort that was led in each building to teach or provide relevant learning experiences for students and staff to enhance climate, prevent bigotry, and create a learning environment where difficult and pertinent issues can be discussed and all could be learned from. Thank you. I knew I was up on the slide this.
Greg settled that way.
Better than the king.
Switching gears back to women's empowerment, not to steer us under his pocket.
Possible.
And some of the really important work that we've done this year is back in October, we took about 20 of our girls to the Day of the Girls Conference, which was sponsored by Westchester County Youth Bureau. And our girls and even the chaperones, we were able to connect with districts from all over Westchester that are diverse in nature than us. And it was just a really beautiful space to see our girls get that opportunity to practice empathy and really learn how to navigate certain diverse and difficult conversations. And that day, our girls attended a vision box workshop, which they fell in love with so deeply that they came back into our building and asked Miss Tracy if they could facilitate vision box making. And behind you actually are all the boxes that the girls, our student leaders who are juniors, facilitated each past class today. And each child was able to kind of walk away with a vision box. And I think the through line of all the events that we're doing is that we shouldn't be one and done. It should also sort of travel through a lot of the work that we're doing within our building, that a lot of our experience shouldn't be siloed. All learners should have access to it in some capacity. And that is just such important work coming from students, not from teachers, which is so important. And you'll see a lot of the girls on the right. Those are the crew we that attended the Day of the Girls Conference, and to the left is a little bit of the vision box making. And then in March, we actually are taking a couple other of our students to a career expo. And this is really intentional in that we're trying to bring students who typically would not have access to this experience or normally would not attend. So it's important that we include all under the umbrella when we're speaking about women's empowerment, curriculum, et cetera. And to switch gears into climate consciousness, it's also important that we stay attuned with what's going on in our community and also including a global scale. As we're educating global citizens, a lot of the topics that are coming up can sort of be difficult for students to speak. So our ENL teacher actually just attended a migrant trauma workshop where she then came back into the building and turnkeyed a lot of the salient points. And it's a lot of heavy work and a lot of heavy videos to watch. But I think the most important idea is that we are aware of our positionality and how we can help these students to get ahead in terms of academic, social, emotional, and their careers.
I think that understanding the lived experiences, this is a population that's growing and changing in our community. And so when we're approaching this work, it's not static work. It's not the same types of curriculum, the same types of population every year. Part of it is learning about new populations and how to support all of our students and families that come in. And so that you have a link there. We're not going to show it here tonight. If you want to look at some of the workshop, it's pretty, I thought it was pretty powerful. Many of our staff members did as well. And then on the right is some other resources that we wanted to share from our ENL teacher, Amy Nanarelli at the high school. The first link, we can play a little bit of that if that's okay, our intro videos of our ENL student. And they're simple videos just introducing the student and their name that Amy put together. And it reminded us of the importance of one, getting to know all members of our community, but also the simple value of hearing a student's name, the way it's supposed to be pronounced, and having them introduce themselves, not just to the teachers who have them in the class, but our entire school community. So when we see them in the hallway, they're absolutely a part of our culture, and we should be connecting in that way. So you can hear a couple of our kids' voices. And then the link below that is a resource that we wanted to share that Amy also put together, that she curated specific resources to share with our whole staff to support our ENL students. And again, it's not about going to a website or attending a workshop. These are curated resources that she created specifically for our students and staff.
The next recommendation area, hiring and retention practices, really sort of could be summed up in the language of the equity stakeholder team with that last sentence. Every child should have adults with whom they can identify. And earlier on, it says in terms of race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, religion, language, and ability. With regards to hiring and retention, there are sort of three things we've got to look at. How do we find the candidates? How do we convince those candidates that this is indeed the place they want to work? And once they commit themselves to working here, how do we ensure that there is a culture that keeps their interest and make sure that they want to stay working here? So as we move on to the next slide, I'm just very happy to share an incredible amount of success we've had in this area. We continue to benefit greatly by being a partner with our regional Lower Hudson Council of School Personnel Administrators. We have had tremendous success in hiring diverse candidates because our district takes an incredible effort to not only have 10 or more administrators being in attendance at that fair, but putting together a front-facing introduction to who the Croton-Harmon schools are that we have heard feedback stands out amongst our regional peers. This year, we are actually also increasing our efforts from the Lower Hudson to the state level. NYSASPA, the New York State Association of School Personnel Administrators, next month will be having a similar statewide fair that Steve and I will be joined by Jared and Rachel to continue to attract diverse candidates from the statewide level. This board and hopefully the community has heard a lot about our hiring practices. Our hiring practices has been twofold. Our hiring practices has gotten allowed us to get to know our candidates in a much more intimate way, in a much quicker way, and allows them also to get to know us in a quicker and more intimate way. The ways that our hiring practices has formulated introductions to each other and sort of solidified our interests in each other have gone an incredible way for us to attract what is increasingly not only highly performing faculty, but ones that also really do represent a lot of those human differences that was our aim of attracting. Then, in terms of how do we keep them around, it is really the professional culture that is so ingrained in the vision map that we hear from our candidates. We can't believe everything you promised us could be true. And now here they are half year into saying, you guys were not lying to us. When we welcome them the way the superintendent does personally to the community through Tiger Welcoming, when they're introduced to all of the innovative activities that you have heard about as part of our new teacher academy, when we have our instructional coaches really focus on propagating a culture of welcoming and support, it has done in an incredible way all the things that we really were set out to do in terms of hiring and retention practices. And And I'm just very, very happy to continue those results as we move into the future.
So parent, guardian, and community engagement is one of our district goals. We are focused on engaging families of all students. And on this slide, what stands out the most to me are to have access to the full and diverse perspectives that exist within our growing community. And Croton is a growing community. Over the past 2 years that I've been here, there has been a surge in our families that are non-English speakers. And we have a lot of transplants from New York City. So we're looking at various perspectives, a more diverse community that we as a district need to be prepared to support. Thank you. So in our last budget defense, we had advocated for the addition of a community aid worker. So we had multiple names, a parent liaison, a community liaison. So we've kind of held down community aid worker as the title of this position. So I went through multiple conversations with our building leaders, our ENL teachers, parent stakeholders. What do you foresee this person, this community aid worker doing? How can they support the efforts that, we've been undertaking as, staff members, teachers, counselors? So we were able to really identify key responsibilities and tasks that this person could really help facilitate. Because in the past, we've had teachers kind of take out of their planning time or their instructional day before and after, helping liaise between incoming families, non-English speaking families. So with the development of this position, we're hoping, and again, we have not identified the person as of today, but we're hoping to be moving someone forward in the upcoming month. But we're looking for that person to really focus on bridging the gap between our non-English speaking families and our school community. We identified, key times that really work for some of our families where we get a higher rate of participation. We have access to translators and they're more available and present at events, which really encourages families to come out and engage and participate. Additionally, we're looking at having this person be visible in all 3 buildings and district office. As you may know, we've centralized our registration process for any new entrants, new registrants. So we have a central registrar who's facilitating the, onboarding of new families. So to make that a more seamless, transition into our district, we have that family accompanied with a translator. So we have a bank of translators that we've been able to, board appoint over the course of the past year and a half. So we have really helped support the families in transitioning, helping them really navigate some of the nuances of the, the US education system. We require a lot of documents that they may not have access to. So our translators, our supports at the school really help them facilitate, the acquisition of those documents so we can get, so that we can fully enroll the child and have them present in school. Additionally, needs assessments. The goal of this position and this person really is to be out in the community, touch as many families and interact with as many families as possible, while building those relationships, identifying needs through conversation, formal needs assessments, so that we can guide them in the direction of where those supports lie. Our community organizations here in Croton, surrounding communities that have, a higher population of non-English speaking families, so their resources may be a bit more bountiful because, we encourage them to have access to those community organizations. Another goal of this position is really to make those welcome calls, identify key people at their children's schools that they can contact and communicate with. Really make them feel comfortable and welcoming so that we can have them committed to being more engaged in the school community. Our ENL teachers and I have had a conversation about what can we do to really reach more people? Because it's almost like you don't know who's out there if, you don't know who's out there essentially. So we're looking to really develop a schedule where we go out into the community, some key locations in the community where we may just meet families, right? Key populations, areas where we have more non-English speaking families and they have access to us, right? We're in their community, we're close to their apartment and home. So we're there, share information, have them connect the district to a particular face or a resource in our school. Additionally, we're hoping that this position will help us facilitate the parent workshops. Jared and I, along with Joe Strini, with collaboration with the athletics department, facilitated a technology night, Tiger Tech Night. Tiger Tech. And we had translators available, reviewing the process for accessing documents in Infinite Parent Portal, you know, making changes in Infinite Campus, registering students for sports and athletic teams. Again, our participation wasn't as high, but we're hoping if someone puts the word out more, you know, builds that connection and kind of starts to recruit families, we'll be able to really maximize those events to reach more people. So we're hoping over the next, over the next month or so to be able to board appoint someone provisionally in that position to help us kind of close out this year and then ramp up for summer and the upcoming school year.
Rich, can I just say, as someone who likes to bust my chops about how often I say taggers, 4 times. Thank you.
Is there another word that I can use?
No, tigers, is perfect.
So speaking of family engagement, I think parents and guardians and family members are a really important stakeholder that we have to keep in mind as we're servicing our ENL students and their families. So Latino Youth College Access is a nonprofit organization that Mr. Mark Maxim has actually connected us with, and we have been partnering with them for the past 2 years. They've offered us an array of presentations in Spanish and offering our families access to financial aid information, how to even begin a college application, and what steps to kind of take within the process and after the process. So we're really excited to continue our work with them and offer a lot of entry points to our families, which they would not have previously because a lot of the information is not in their native language. And another cool program that we're looking forward to is the Latino Youth Scholar Program, where our school will be able to nominate one child. And if they're awarded that Latino Youth Scholarship, they are set up for success from their 10th grade all the way up until they graduate from college. So it's essentially a 6-year program where Luca will provide all the services to that student, advising, mentees, training, and really seeing that child through so that they are meeting their graduation requirements and walking away with a degree.
That's amazing.
Good evening. I just want to say I'm really excited to be here. It's like magic in this room. Everyone talks so passionately about everything that we're doing. It's incredible. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about parent, guardian, community engagement. Obviously, we, the ENL teachers, are uniquely positioned to engage our multilingual families on a deeper and closer level. So we are passionate that they're not only informed, but also feel welcome and that they are supported throughout the district. Over the last few years, the ENL teachers have endeavored to strengthen the partnerships that we have with one another, but also with our co-teachers and colleagues, with our teaching teams, with our counselors, and with our parents. We are trying to, as John was saying, reimagine the curriculum that we are teaching so that the supports are built right into that curriculum rather than having somebody coming in to support a pre-existing formula. We are making sure that all important information is translated and sent home. So not just electronically, but also with the students in hand. We have parents who may, for whatever reason, not feel comfortable receiving that information using technology or are not yet comfortable with some of the technology that we use. I know Jared has been wonderful and present and was the last event that we had at PVC. It was like an evening, the tech night, thank you, I'm sorry. And we had translators and parents were able to sit down and work on computer literacy skills to make that easier for them. Translators are readily available. So we, as Rachel was saying, we have a lot more translators available to our parents. We're also using iPads now. So we have an iPad in the nurse's office and at the Welcome Center.
so that when our parents show up, regardless of who they are or what language they speak, they are able to communicate with somebody, because I can't imagine that it feels very good to show up at your child's school and be trying to speak with someone and having nobody understand what you're saying. So these have been really important things that we've included. There's been much collaboration between the Croton Free Library and our district. The conversational hour class is still running on Tuesdays. From what I understand, it's become something much greater. Now we have people who are going to learn English, also teaching bits of Spanish to other people. So it's this really great thing where people bring something and then take something away. We have a PVC parent, Maria Corrales, who is fabulous. She's volunteer translated and she does a lot of volunteer work. So audio things, she's done things with me as well. And we've been working on building bridges between, so we have all of these wonderful resources and we have Croton Caring and we have the food pantry and we have even in neighboring towns, Open Door. And we have all these great resources and we don't have like a stockpile of information to be like, here, this is everything that we can offer. So the community aid worker obviously will assist with that, but Janet Cueto and Amy Anarelli and myself and Maria were thinking about the importance of being in the community, not just engaging the community, but being out and available and showing that face time. So we've talked about, having like ENL parent hour. Yeah, so we would go and like set up shop and just have information maybe before or after that class or at different locations in the community. And just that way parents can see that we're here, we are available, there are needs that you have. We would like to help you find the resources for those. And I think that's pretty much it.
So our last recommendation surrounds professional development. The spirit of this recommendation really is embedding work around equity within all learning in terms of all of our staff members, not just our teachers. We've focused so much tonight on what students learn day in, day out, but as adults, we understand the importance of lifelong learning, right? And how important that is within our careers. So teachers, especially in the classroom and all of our staff members, we strive every day to inspire students to embody that lifelong learning. But at the same time, we have to ensure that those educators and all of our staff members are walking that walk, right, and talking that talk. So we took a long look, especially after coming out of COVID. There's many models within education. I came from a model where I taught where it was very top down, right? We were talk about layer cake. It was like one layer after another topped on top of each other. And it was a new initiative every year. And we were exhausted, right? I taught 15 years where I used to teach. So coming out of COVID, especially, we wanted to try to shift the momentum and really inspire our educators and all of our staff members to pursue something that made them happy and made them passionate. And you see just in this small glimpse of our panel here, how many talented faculty members we have and staff members we have, and all of their diverse passions and interests. They know exactly where we need to go next. So that's what inspired our work and our shift in terms of making our year-long professional development approach at the beginning of last year, the passion projects. You heard a lot about these, but this has shifted, right? So no longer is it this top-down model. Everybody's been encouraged to kind of develop an interest, a passion, and then collaborate with one another. That's also, right, we learn so well from one another. So I'm gonna put Linda back on the spotlight. She talked a lot about her passion in climate consciousness. And if you wanna speak to a little bit how this structure helped you to evolve that.
So thank you. Having the ability to go ahead and pursue something that was of interest to me was not something I think I have over 25 years of teaching experience. I've never been told to go ahead and do that before in my life. So being able to go do that, I kind of was like, well, what do I do? Like, what do I really want to know about And so I have a very vested interest in, indigenous people, here in North America and South America, let's say, on this Western Hemisphere. And so that's where my passion, studies started. And in digging into that, it literally brought me full circle right back to the restorative practices that I am now really digging into and bringing into the classroom. I brought my books with me just so you can say this is like only 3 of my books. But the indigenous studies that I've been digging into and sharing, because I'm part of Critical Friends and I'm sharing some of what I'm learning in some of the classes that I'm taking and I'm bringing it and sharing it with them. And like, we're talking about it and it's causing conversation about some of these things. And it's really interesting, to have these conversations about these ideas and things that are out there. And this whole idea of studying indigenous people and learning about what it was, it's really about understanding the community and what it's like. And, you know, one of the things that I have done, which I brought my talking piece with me tonight, this is a Navajo talking stick. So when I do the talking circles with the students, in order to really help them to understand the importance and the significance behind it, I gave them an introduction of where it came from. And I explained to them the importance of it in the indigenous community and what it meant to them. And so we do it in advisory and we do it in my classroom. And they use this and it's, you know, I was a little worried. I was like, okay, you know, are they gonna pull the horse, you know, the horse hair out of it? Is the rabbit fur gonna come flying off? Like, what's gonna happen? They are amazing. I have to tell you, they take this and it's like silence and the person holding the talking piece talks. And then somebody will raise their hand and they pass it. And the result of what these kids have done with this circle and what they are sharing with each other and what they're able to talk about and the experience that it's giving them. And in my classroom, some of my students are really hesitant to speak. Sometimes they don't talk. Like, that's one of the things that we're working on overcoming. And so having them share within a small group and having them understand that everyone in this circle, right? In the circle, everyone is equal. Everyone has that same amount of equity. Everyone has that same right to speak. So it's, you know, all the stuff that I've been learning comes like full circle for me. And again, it's like, I talked Jared's ear off one day when he came to visit me. I literally talked his ear off about all this stuff. It's an amazing thing that you have given us to allow us to pursue this and how it plays into, for me, directly into what I'm trying to do and what I want to do and where I want to see my students go. So I thank you for allowing us to do this because it has been an amazing and eye-opening and really enlightening experience to go ahead and learn about all these things and to see how much it coincides with what we as educators are trying to do. So thank you.
All right, so I will never miss an opportunity to talk. I can make lots of connections. But so as you've heard many times, we really believe and research shows that working elbow to elbow is the best and most effective type of professional development. And that's really what interdisciplinary course design is about. It's about creating from scratch the courses that we want, the curriculum we want and believe in. So it's not about making incremental shifts in our existing curriculum. It's not often, I think, in a career in education where you get to sit in a room and say, what do you believe we should be teaching and how should we be teaching it? So that's what this is about. And just making a connection back to what John was talking about with hiring and retention. As many of you know, many of our newer staff members are some of the people who are involved in planning these courses. And so when we say to them in the hiring process, this is going to be an opportunity for you, and then they see it come to life, bringing their passions and their backgrounds to creating these new courses, they see that promise really coming together. And it's both about the course content that we're talking about, but it's also about those larger structures of using these courses as places to design innovative grading structures, different types of assessments, and passion-based work for students. So there's that piece to it too. It's really about just the larger scale rethinking what school looks like and putting new ingredients, going back to our cake, into the mix to create something new.
And we have been really very conscious about how equity training unfolds for all of our people. Marlena Horton, I'm so glad to see you because she was like, can I put you on the spot? Because the first bullet was actually a credit to Marlene's expertise in terms of being able to collect all of our custodians, all of our clerical staff, all of our teacher aide staff, and make sure that they really had some very fine time to think about equitable structures and with, you know, especially with regard to their own practice. Would you mind just telling us a little bit about it?
Yeah, it was Superintendent Conference Day, and Anna Marie Stratner and Kara Herbert and I, we made up these 3 different groups and had them all rotate through. So I had, you know, one group of all custodians at first, and we rotate through everybody. And my group, it was really telling, like we sat in a circle and I had a ball and we threw the ball as a talking point ball. And about, have you ever experienced any racism in your lifetime? And then people could go from all different angles, and it was the most difficult and most exciting training ever, because these are people I've never met before, people from district office that I might know a name, but I don't know a face. And we all got together, and by the end, I mean, there were a lot of tears in the room. There was a lot of bonding, and I was very nervous because I was afraid it wasn't gonna be an easy sell, because, you know, who wants to hear about this on a day when you're here all day? But, I did feedback after, and everyone really liked it and appreciated it. And they want even more of it, but it was very powerful, and it was a really, really amazing experience. I learned a lot myself.
We have our faculty asking, at our elementary school, we have teachers who are saying, we are having more and more students come up to us with, you know, different, questions about gender, related issues, and really just the need, them coming to us saying, can we develop our own arsenal, of vocabulary and ways to really speak to our students when they come to us with gender questions. And our answer, of course, is absolutely. And Carrie and Craig's responsiveness in terms of finding trainers in the very near future is something happening right now. You heard a little bit about really how we are experiencing more and more students who are coming to us with migrant trauma. And how we were able to have one of our teachers really go out and get some very, very rich experiences and come back and really be a trainer for our own faculty in terms of an appreciation for the kind of traumatic experiences our students may have endured, and really the best way for us to be respectful, acknowledge, and help them work through that trauma. Probably the best indicator, you know, you've heard a lot about how we were letting our faculty pursue their own interests through passion pursuits, through designing their own professional learning options. And really, the next slide speaks for itself, because this is just this one school year. This is just 23-24. And this is what our faculty has chosen to go. And this is not like 2 interested people going to 20 different things each. This is representative of all of our buildings, all of our subject areas, all of our grade levels. This is what our faculty is going out and saying, this is what I want to know more about. And not only is this a one-time thing, but these are the kinds of things through the collaborative culture that we are developing within our building, that they're coming back. They are learning, they are sharing through department meetings, through team meetings, through grade level meetings, through curriculum meetings. They are sharing this so that this becomes a groundswell of learning that starts to permeate our culture, and something that I think should be have us all very proud.
So now, as I promised, we're back to these questions, and obviously we open it up to our board members and anyone else who, you know, wants us to, what we can consider more. Are there things that you'd like to know more about? Are there experiences that we want to see firsthand? And are there considerations as to what are some key areas of strength that we've discussed tonight? And maybe anything else that we need to consider further?
Does anybody have any questions?
I had a question around curriculum. When as you're talking about exposing kids to different cultures, and then when you said about not being one and done, kind of a 2-part question. How can, or are there opportunities to replicate what you're doing at CET in PVC in the high school, so it's not a one and done, right? An opportunity maybe to delve deeper into a culture, maybe the same culture or a different culture, using the target language. And so that's one question. The other question is, are there opportunities to expand on that, to bring in different cultures and different languages into the classroom?
I absolutely
Go
think
for it.
that's possible. I
Yeah.
mean, like I said, the community here in Croton is so diverse, and just labeling it as guest teachers, it's not limiting it to just parents. I've had grandparents Zoom in who were marine biologists from California, and we live streamed them and we were interviewing them and asking questions, and that correlated with our science curriculum at the time. I was in second grade last year. I've had a naturalist come in, one of the mothers of my students last year, who talked about invasive plant species in the Hudson Valley. And then a month or two later, she coordinated an I Love My Park Day at Croton Landing, and myself and a bunch of students from my class and their families went to the park at like 8 o'clock in the morning with gloves up to here, and we were picking garlic mustard. So I think continuing those experiences and building on it and continuing to integrate it into our curriculum is something that we can certainly do across all buildings. It's certainly possible. As you were saying, you were so passionate about Indigenous people and learning about Indigenous people. I had a parent this past November ask, I know it's Thanksgiving time, but it's also a time for Indigenous people, and can I please come in? She reached out to me and read this story and about dream catchers and this culture, and I said, absolutely. And she came in, and then we had our amazing performers come in at CET for Indigenous dancing. Marlene, I think you totally organized that as well, right? So I think there's just so many beautiful connections that are made through the community outside of CET and within CET, and I certainly know that's happening in the other buildings as well.
It just looks different. Like, for instance, the first thing that I would want you to know is that basically in our classrooms, and I don't ever walk into a class and don't see culture as part of the discussion. From the books they're reading, whether it's about different historical events that involved other cultures and maybe even atrocities or problems, in our history that are addressed. The other thing is like, there are certain things that really stand out as key cultural learnings. And just one example of that would be when we have in our Korean lantern people, these people not only look very different than most of our kids, but they bring a perspective that the kids really enjoy as well as learn from. Also, one of the key areas that we see a lot of cultural learning is in our, exploratory world language program, all right, where the kids learn all three, cultures and the foundational pieces of world language. And then again, to Lisa's point, delve into not just learn 7,000, different characters in Mandarin, but to actually learn about the culture and how the language is used, whether that be French or Spanish. And then I would say through the interdisciplinary projects that teachers utilize, the kids delve deeply into culture. Just even a science, centered or a social studies centered project like terrain formers, where they have to understand the terrain of given countries in Central America and the implications on culture. That's another example of it.
And I think also, if you look at the Croton Common Vision map, I think it incorporates all three schools together. And that it shouldn't be so segmented. This is the elementary, this is the middle, and this is the high school. And what we do in that building is so segmented. It should be, it should grow from elementary. Elementary is such a nice time when we get them. They're so young and they're excited about learning. So I know my goal in my room is just to ignite this fun about learning a new language. It doesn't have to be Spanish. I mean, they're going to move to the middle school and they might love Mandarin, and I feel like I did my job. They're gonna pursue Mandarin because they just love learning a new language. But I think the one important aspect of the vision map is that flexible, the dynamic of learning spaces, and that flexible where you can work interdisciplinary, with another teacher. Maybe there is some kind of block scheduling where we can continue, we start the art project and it's like, okay, we have to wait till next week. They're excited and they're in the moment, and then we have to say, okay, enough. So I think it needs to be wherever we're starting it, it needs to grow and grow so that, we do have that wonderful vision that expands across the schools, across the curriculums, and not so segmented where we're just in our own building doing our thing. It needs to connect.
I mean, just having the high school students coming to our
Yes.
third grade classroom, that was amazing, and they were forming those connections. So you had these teenagers with these little third graders and saying, I know you, I recognize you from CIA, or you taught me at Yorktown Stage last summer at theater camp. So just forming those connections, I think that really contributes to this climate that we already have developed. It's just continuing to strengthen it.
I think also from a professional development standpoint, as you've heard already, we've been working on getting people to visit each other's classrooms and supporting them, providing self-coverage so that they can do that. So like Liz, when you were talking, the first thing that came to mind was, I think our 12th grade English teachers would love to see one of those parent presentations, because they do a cultural close-up project every year. And I was thinking, how great would it be for parents to come in, or community members to come in to connect to the cultural close-up project, and have our 12th grade students actually reaching out to those community members to pair up with the text that they've chosen. So the more that we get into each other's spaces and hear from each other about what they're doing, I think, to speak to your question, Omar, that's where the inspiration comes from.
That's also something that the E&L department is working on, not being so segmented. So the E&L teacher in the elementary school and I are working on, the fourth graders come to visit. And then we have the E&L students from our building welcome them, and they usually write them out with a card and kind of answer their questions. And then Amy and I are working on a unit where our older multilingual students will actually mentor the 7th and 8th grade students at BBC, even if just to give them the advice of like, when I was in middle school, what I wish I would have worked harder on, what I would have known. And then setting our 8th graders up to go right into 9th grade. So I completely agree with everything that you're saying, and that's something that we're working on as well.
And another example that I could think of like transfer of knowledge happening across all 3 buildings is, Linda, when you were speaking about restorative circles, Carrie and I are trying to pilot restorative circles through our advisory program. So I was like, I have to connect with her. So I think things are happening to some degree that equate to what we are all trying to do, but it's happening in different versions. So like the recipe is kind of, it's all different pieces of recipes, but initially we're trying to get at the same thing. So kind of to answer your question is we're in the process of, we have the recipe, but now we're in the process of expanding it to some degree.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and then Josh.
Great, thanks, Sarah. So I just want to thank the administration and the staff for not only this presentation, but all of the work that you've been carrying out, and that you've shown tonight. I think a lot of it is extremely, difficult work, very challenging work, but also I think it's clear how much passion, excitement, and energy you're bringing to each and every part of it. So thank you for all you're doing, and also thank you to we started out by acknowledging the past work of the equity stakeholder team that I think really set in motion a lot of these initiatives and efforts. And I think really provided a lot of guidance to the district and a lot of engagement among the community on these issues. So I think it's been a great a great partnership from the beginning. And I kind of see all of this work as kind of a combination of so much has been done, and we should applaud ourselves for all of the work that's been done. And there's so much more left to do, right? I think we can all acknowledge that this is never ending work. It's going to be a work in progress. And I feel the commitment from the district to continue to carry this work forward. Just a couple of comments and some questions about some of the stuff you put forward. There's a lot more than I'll want to ask at some later date, but Just a couple of pieces. On the migrant trauma workshops, and the work there, I think we've always seen these, migration has always been the story of our state, our country, right, and is nothing new. But we know that, in the last year or so, there's been, sort of I don't know, part, and I guess another part of that story in a different way here, and really hitting the ground here in Croton as well. And I really admire the work of, not kind of hiding from those stories and that difficulty and that trauma, but really facing it head on. And, I think making it clear to people, among the school community who may not experience that directly, to really understand what it is, what these families have gone through, right, to come to this country, to arrive in Croton, and to form a new life here. And I think a lot can be learned from those stories, from other students and also for our staff as well, who, I think really are listening and should continue to listen to the stories of these families, and why they left their countries, why they're here, what they're trying to build, et cetera. So, that's amazing work, and I'm excited for it to continue. And I also heard some pretty tangible kind of additions of capacity in the community aid worker, the interpreter banks, which I think really show, real commitment to adding capacity, adding kind of real tools, right, to our school community, that will, I think, help on diversity, equity issues and challenges. So just on the restorative justice work, I'm super impressed by that. I think that, I came from a kind of an upbringing in school where like schooling was often seen as a place of punitive discipline, right? And you sort of like knew if you got called in somewhere, you're in trouble and that's bad and all of that. And really seeing those moments of tension and kind of grappling with that, facing accountability in a positive way for that, is extremely important, I think, pivot, for all schools to be making, and on all issues. And I think in particular, I think because young people are also grappling with things like racism, gender, misgendering, things like that, that it's important for us to, as a district, continue to focus in on moments of harm when harm is caused, and to use restorative justice approaches to repair the harm, right? And to ensure that, young people who, may be, addressing other young people in negative ways, in racist ways, whatever it may be, that those are moments, those are learning opportunities where our young people can actually engage in dialogue about what it means to other people to cause harm, et cetera, and to use those as opportunities for learning as well. And then finally, I just want to make a comment / question around how we're communicating the work that we're all presenting here, because I think from my conversations in the community, there's a lot of hunger to just know more about this work, right? Like all of us in this room, maybe watching the video feed, I think we'll be very excited about what is actually happening. And I think any efforts that we can put forward as far as actually communicating this work out to the community, with excitement and pride, right? Saying like, look at what we're doing, right? And it's fascinating how much, a social media post that's quick and can get the point across about an initiative, just one thing that we're doing, how much impact that can have in having the community really understand the seriousness and the kind of I would say just the clarity of purpose that the district is taking around these issues, and communicating out to the broader world. So I'm newly on the communications committee, so I'm happy to also help on those efforts and work with the administration on how we might be able to do that. So just some examples of things that seem very impressive, and I think areas, I think in all of these areas, many of us will have ideas on how to go even further, right? And provide even more, more energy and momentum towards, all of these areas. So, really appreciate all of the info and energy and passion you're putting behind this.
Monica, you're up next.
Yes. Thank you all. It's been really helpful to hear all this and to sort of hear it all come together. And I wanted to also thank John, I think, for his positioning of this, because having served on the equity stakeholder team, it is exciting to sort of see that we started someplace and we, as a district, really thought about the questions that we were asking ourselves, and then in answering them, have applied them really specifically to the demographics of our district, to the needs of our teachers and administrators to be able to find passion in their work, and really in service of our specific local community, rather than sort of applying, you know, this like a national rubric or just sort of like the catchphrases of this sort of work. We're going a little bit deeper, and so that's really important to see, and I really appreciate that. I have a lot of specific questions. I'm not going to ask them all tonight, but I look forward to having an opportunity to continue that conversation as appropriate. I wanted to touch base in terms of curriculum, just to ask a couple questions. I think it's exciting to see that some of the developments at the high school in terms of more opportunities for heritage speakers and field biliteracy are all great ways for our students who have a language other than English that they're very skilled in to have an opportunity to sort of demonstrate their mastery and success. And I was wondering, the first part of my question on that is, how many students are we seeing participate in these programs now? And, you know, what are the opportunities you'd mentioned, Laura, specifically about reaching out to language speakers who have proficiency in some of the languages that we don't teach at the school? I would like to know a little bit more about how that works. And then I have a follow-up question, so I'll give you a chance to answer that.
So every year, we usually have somewhere between 4 and 7 students who actually successfully complete the seal of biliteracy. It's a multi-year portfolio program, so you really have to commit to the journey. And our teachers mentor the students through that. We actually just recently had a seal of biliteracy planning committee meeting where we talked about making some additions, such as having like retreat work days during the school day a couple times a year for the students who are working on their seal of biliteracy projects, so that it's not only just something that they work on at home or one-on-one with their mentor teacher, that it also builds a community of other students who are working on it together. So that's something that we're looking forward to implementing. And I think it also sends a really important message to our entire staff and student body to say that these students are engaged in this really important work. And so just like any field trip or day that you're missing classes, we're giving them time to do that and work together. And one of the other key components to getting students engaged in this is actually surveying our students and families to understand what those heritage languages are. And that's something that our counseling team has helped us out with this year, because that's where the connection starts. You don't always know what somebody's heritage language is, or, you know, particularly for students who speak English proficiently in school, you may not know that they also speak a second language at home. So getting good data is one of the first steps in making early connections when students are in 9th grade. We added a section to our course catalog and our round robin presentations to highlight the seal of biliteracy this year, because it used to be something that the language teachers introduced in their classes and were kind of at our ENL department would introduce. And it, in some ways, that can limit your population. You might have students who don't take a language class or stopped taking language classes. So now it's becoming more of a conversation for our whole school community. We haven't started reaching out to our community yet to get those language speakers. That'll probably happen a little bit later this spring, once we have a sense of who is definitely going to continue in the seal of biliteracy program. But we are really open to suggestions. We're thinking Parent Square's translated information. Hopefully our community aid worker can help us, you know, identify resources. But I think that's something that we're all really open to feedback on. You know, any parents through your work, just reaching out to the other buildings. They don't have to be
even parents, students, they can be community members, connections, or anybody. So that's a work in progress that we need help with.
No, no, that sounds good. My other question is sort of like a broader question. I guess it's gonna apply to, and perhaps, I don't know how best to answer it, but I guess for you, Laura, and then possibly a CET question too, which is about sort of like, frankly, it's like about equitable access to some of these great programs that we're offering. So for example, you presented, these core travel experiences sort of as like these entry points into culture, but thinking realistically just about the cost of some of these experiences. And I'm gonna state what those costs are. The Taiwan trip is for 11th and 12th graders. It costs $4,250 per student approximately, right? The La Rochelle exchange, the last time it happened was in 2019. At that time, it was $2,000 per student. The PVC Quebec trip is for 4 days and it's $1,000 per student. So what I'm highlighting here, I'm sure you can hear it, is that it's like when we're talking about these things, we're also talking about what the entry point is. One of the questions that's come up, and I think it came up a couple weeks ago at our board meeting, we had a wonderful donation from a couple of community organizations, 2 of them, supporting the Taiwan trip. And of course, like any sort of contribution like that makes a substantial difference to a student who maybe doesn't have access or doesn't necessarily even think of this as something that they could attend, because when you get the flyer for it, the cost is right there, right? So one of my questions is, what are our thoughts about sort of either expanding these sort of cultural opportunities that they take place, perhaps even in a school environment, so that there's broader access. And then further to that, thinking about what sort of programming can be made available, but again, doesn't have this cost area. That's one question. The second question we'll get to if you are willing to take this one, is this question also about access, because I think we've talked about this in this room before as well. ITAD, like, such a great thing. It's a great opportunity for like these push-ins, but we've also talked about the fact that these push-ins aren't happening across the board. They're affecting like the limited number of classrooms at CET. There is an opting in element on the part of the teacher who wants to collaborate with a specials teacher. And we did have a conversation about this a few weeks ago, that the breadth of that, these opportunities sound incredible. Like to have like a parent come into your classroom, but are these things happening in every classroom? Or are they happening in the classrooms where a teacher is able to make space or take that initiative and do that outreach? And I know in your case, Liz, you do that outreach and you do such an incredible job. But the question is, again, when we're talking about peer-to-peer learning and elbow to elbow with our teachers, how are we supporting other people who maybe want to do that, but don't feel like they can like email somebody and say, I want you to come in to be like the mystery reader, but I want the mystery reader specifically to read a book that's specific to their culture or whatever. So I'm sorry, it's a lot of questions and I'm gonna limit myself to those too for tonight.
Can I just clarify the ITAD and collaboration and what Liz does are different things?
Yes, I know.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So interesting, I was actually starting to write about this a little bit for my weekly for tomorrow, because that's, I think, the ongoing challenge of providing these opportunities is they're expensive. And is there an opting out? There are students who will ask us for help and families who ask us for help. And we have so far been able to help with whatever was needed. But is there sort of a self-selection out of the process? And that's the bigger, that's to me, the bigger issue, because we know that we can put together the support for the kids who have opted in and need some support. And obviously don't have a good answer to that right now. I think some of the things we learned during COVID are that while it's not the same level of experience, we did like a virtual exchange with La Rochelle. And so we're able on an ongoing basis to have like, they were almost like video pen pal experiences with the school in France. Is that the same experience as traveling and doing a homestay? Probably not. Not, an equitable or equal experience. But I think, and again, I don't know the answer personally to it, but I think as a system, pushing for ways and inroads to make those cultural exchange opportunities accessible to everybody, and clear from the beginning that if there are any concerns about finances, we have a plan for that, and to be able to confidently communicate that. I don't think that we're there yet because we don't have the full funding and plan for it, but some examples of things that we're trying to do to push the system is
our high school PTSA is working on reevaluating all of the different scholarships that they offer. Some of which have fewer applicants on any given year, some of which are, in some ways duplicates of others, and kind of rethinking those funds and establishing an international travel scholarship that we could then know every year we have X amount of dollars, and we can say that at the beginning when we advertise these programs. And the PTSA is a wonderful resource for that, but I think that's where we really need to focus our energies. In addition to maybe adding some other opportunities for hosting here, virtual exchanges, but those are once in a lifetime opportunities to go or to host somebody here and then go stay with that family. So I think the more that we can invest energy into finding larger solutions, as a community is where we, again, could use some help with, to be honest.
Just to add to what Laura said, just so you can speak to the Quebec Club, there have been children, again, I think the problem is the mindset of the child and the family to say, oh, we can't afford that, therefore we're not going, opposed to the kids who sign up. We know there might be financial difficulties. We're able to meet those with that trip, because you said, it's a little bit more affordable, being a quarter of the price of some of the others. But I also want to point out that, for such opportunities like Quebec, there's extensive fundraising that's done for those students as well as for everyone else to kind of tamp down the cost, because let's be honest, money doesn't grow on trees for any of our families. The other thing is that, like you pointed out, the community organizations have been very good about offsetting some of the cost of this, as well as our PTAs. So that's a big thing. And the other thing is one of the models that we have of how do we bring this into the school so that you don't have to go out of the school. One of them is a more recent thing at PVC, which is the video pen pals with Senegalese students that we're doing, which has been really good. And again, very cost effective. Okay, because it's just comes out of Jared's budget for the computer.
Excuse me.
That's great, thank you.
And I would also like to share, I just love having these questions brought to the table in this room right now where everyone can share solutions to possible issues. And I do want to share that I'm involved in a program called International Volunteer Headquarters. And as a teacher who loves to travel, I use them a lot because it allows me to see the world on a budget. And I would love to talk more with administrators and the board and everyone involved on how maybe we can incorporate this. I just recently went on a major trip to Hua Hin in Thailand and Bangkok for under $1,000 for 10 days. So there's certainly ways around these budgets where we can make it work for our students and provide them with that, ultimate cultural experience of getting on a plane and going somewhere at a fraction of the cost that you mentioned. So that's something that I would love to discuss more.
Anand, were you finished?
Well, do you want to do the second question?
Yes, so the second question, I understand not every classroom teacher or specialty teacher may be willing to have these collaborations with community members and families, but one way that I've engaged some of my colleagues is through buddy classes. So in CET, we all have buddy classes, whether it be for reading buddies or holiday celebrations or shared community experiences. So our buddy class in 3rd grade is with our 1st grade class, Mrs. Chausa's 1st grade class, and one of her parents is a carpenter. And he came in and he brought in pieces of wood for the students to carve. So that engaged 2 classes through 1 parent. So it's almost like you're hitting 2 birds with 1 stone just by engaging that 1 parent and collaborating and having those buddy classes or partnerships with colleagues. So I think that's something that we can certainly think about expanding on.
I think it's also important to bring up what Laura brought up earlier about the idea that we are building more structures to encourage that collaboration between teachers. It's baked into the Teacher Academy. It's now baked into as an option in APPR, so that, a lot of times the busyness of a day, we don't have those opportunities to connect with one another, right? But now with these structures, teachers like Liz have opportunities to share these wonderful things that she's doing and the impact that it has on her students. So
Across.
work in progress.
Yeah, no, I think I'm glad you reminded us all of that, actually, because we have had really detailed conversations now among administration and the board about professional development and hiring, and I think there's a lot that you have shared with us, which we didn't go into great detail about tonight because we've had a whole work session about that. That really make it very clear that when a new teacher comes on board, if they have an idea, there's somebody who's there to like catch that idea and help them execute it. And I think also in terms of the partnerships, in terms of what you've been talking about sort of the, you know, the more collaborative teaching, and then also the opportunity for that professional development to be happening in smaller groups so you can learn from each other, not just like best practices, but like things that you're excited about. So I do feel like structurally, and certainly I have heard from teachers that there is a good feeling about the fact that these structures and the scaffolding exists, not just for new teachers, but even for people who've been doing it for like 20 years. Because it doesn't actually, you know, it's like you need that throughout your career, not just when you first start.
Exactly. I think you perfectly said, and it's, you don't shift perspectives or inspire just overnight, right? I think these things happen slowly over time. And I think we acknowledged as a system when we dove into the APPR model that it wasn't doing what we were hoping it would do, right? Ultimately. So that shift and that change, I think that ultimately we're going to start to see the benefit of that over time. We're already starting to see.
I think from a systemic standpoint, right, part of our job is to push on the status quo hard. And we have over the past couple of years, and you've heard it from faculty members tonight, from Linda saying, I've been doing this work for 25 years and have never been asked to think in a certain way before. So it's also about how you get the system to shift the questions that we ask. So it's been an evolution, I think, from can we do certain things to how can we do more of those things, right? And there's evidence of that clearly across the system, and that's where I think the most important and interesting potential for growth is. Yes.
And we also add that there's thoughtful risk-taking that comes out of that. So when there are discrepancies between what one teacher and another is doing, sometimes that's not the result of incohesion, but more of experimentation. I mean, one of the most thoughtful risk-taking I saw was a teacher who decided that he was gonna teach salsa dancing to 8th graders. I think he thought it was gonna flop for sure. I mean, those kids would dance.
So going back to the international travel, I was actually, you know, as everybody was talking and Steve just talked about pushing on the status quo, every year when we get into international travel planning, we do some research, reach out to other school districts. What are you doing? How are you approaching? The answer is always, we don't, no good answer. And so, you know, in this sort of new way of approaching what if, you know, not just accepting, the way things are, you know, some of, again, within my ignorance, this could be completely not legal from a policy perspective, but are there opportunities to establish, you know, even like a general scholarship fund, the way we have different donors, for all the other scholarships in our community, and grow that bank to support. We have so many scholarships, and so many generous donors, you know.
And we've definitely talked about that. It's like this, it's like, what, you know, what are these? And we have to revisit them every year to make sure they're getting distributed. Yeah.
Amazing, if that was even okay.
Yeah.
So we're robbing a bank.
Before moving on, can I go back to this conversation, Jerry and Mel were having? I think, and I raised this at the last work session.
Yeah.
It seems that there's this push, high energy, wanting to do something different, and it seems to be working. The question is, how do you cherry pick the ones that were the most successful and say, this is something we want to replicate in every classroom, in every grade, so on and so forth? I think that's what I invite the administration and the faculty to think about, because I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to be able to identify those opportunities and say, this is worth replicating.
Josh?
So when we first got together, I'm thinking about the third question on the screen right now. And I was thinking about something that was discussed way back at the beginning of this process. Feels like it's like 2 or 3 years ago. We talked about getting uncomfortable. And getting uncomfortable in a safe way, in a safe space. And it sounds to me that through all of this, there is an element of discomfort, a good discomfort. This, we learn when we're in those uncomfortable moments, but we need to find ways, obviously, to do that with ourselves and with our faculty and our staff and our students in a way that is forwarding and effective. And, that I heard some discussion tonight of some uncomfortable topics. For instance, some of the migration stories, the trauma, and is an example of that. Past experience of racism or discrimination is an example of that, but it's not the only, right? So I guess my question is, do you feel that we are doing that effectively? That is, let me rephrase that. What is the next step for us as a district? If you could pick one or two things that we could be doing or should be doing, or that we want to focus on, that will help our students to have a better understanding, continue to have a better understanding of each other and each other's experiences. I think we've talked about several. If you had to pick one or two that are like the top two, what would they be?
If I could start, I would love to have our students play more of a leadership role in a variety of areas in the school. So for instance, one of the examples that kind of led me to that was, instead of seeing our migrant students, let's just say, if we look at that demographic, or new arrivals, as a deficit of what we have to do or what we have to do to meet those kids' needs, giving those children leadership opportunities has been very successful at PVC Middle School. Showcasing their experiences as strengths that other people can learn from, that is a really important thing, and also brings them so much value in terms of what they offer to the community, not just, what they experience in our community, but what they offer and bring with them to our community. So for instance, in one of the interdisciplinary experiences that Catherine had with a teacher, having those kids write their stories and then other kids having to study those stories in the context of language and ELA and so forth, and social studies, has been very powerful. So I would answer your question, and I think it's worth even more consideration than that, is how do we give more kids leadership roles so that it's not us doing something to them, but them orchestrating what the overall school experience is as well.
One of our recent graduates wrote her college essay about how much she learned from just talking to other people. And it was such a beautiful essay that she wrote. And we were just talking about it recently with a group of teachers, and how that is should be the cornerstone for how we create ongoing curricular opportunities, like thinking about the kid. Sometimes it's hard to talk about your own stories with your peers, right, within your school, but the idea of the cross-age learning, which is something that we've really been embracing lately, and having, say, like high school students going to talk to middle school students or elementary school students about their stories and their backgrounds and bringing in their families, that feels like maybe not the most important thing, but an inroad for how to approach it. Listening to each other, sharing stories, and creating strategic opportunities to do that student to student across buildings, acknowledging that it can be difficult among your peers to do that. So not fully formulated, but that core of listening to each other and getting to know people on a human level feels like something as a place to start.
I'd say a core component of what makes that successful, and I think something that we are doing really, really well internally, is building trust. So trust is a huge impactful word. The board has given a level of trust in supporting something as profound as a vision map. Steve and his leadership is creating a professional culture of trust from the very, very top that really manifests itself in what you're hearing tonight. What you're hearing tonight could not happen in a professional culture and in a student culture unless there was something really, really pure in terms of being able to trust each other as people. I would say when we're thinking about the next things we need to do is how do we make sure that we are communicating in a way that that trust is leaving the inner circles of this district and is something that is really understood and being felt within our community. Because as we go forward with so much of what really is an incredibly innovative, exciting, audacious plan for the future, that trust has got to be the element of the next step so that there is the support that permeates from within to the greater corporate community. So that, to me, how you build that trust is imperative.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I would add,
And
I think student voice in the creation of curriculum is something that we've talked about a bit. I think that to use the word audacious, right? There's audacity in shifting that paradigm, but I still think we would agree school in general is still something that happens to students more often than it happens with them. In broad terms. And so I think one of our challenges is how do we systemically better involve kids in having voice in what they learn in our public.
And I understand that I asked a somewhat vague and unformed question, and I understand that it's perfectly fine that we had a little discomfort here with finding some new ideas, and I appreciate that.
I think the
Thank you.
beauty of all of it is that it is in that vision map though, right?
That's true.
Imagine a time, like going off of what you were saying, Omar, imagine a time, not to put you on the spot, Linda. Imagine a time when Linda's passion and what she's learned about talking circles transcends just her circle of students, but to interested faculty members, to bringing community members in, right? That would be amazing.
Absolutely.
Right, and I think we're on that road. I think the drive to get there is there, but I think it incorporates everything that's been said. John talking about trust, right? You have to trust one another. You have to trust the students. You have to trust the community. You have to trust each other. It's exciting to see the start of this.
Thoughtful risk-taking requires
That's right.
a foundation of trust.
That's it.
But not only the trust, it's giving you a sense of this empowerment that you can partially do what you have a passion for, and then you give that to your students and you want to ignite that empowerment of them, that when they leave the district, they're empowered to do great things, right? And I would love to do a professional development. Right, I don't think we have much time to talk without your switching off.
But that's part of, right, that's part of the vision map too, is building schedules, right?
Schedules.
And structures, and when we look at contracts, right, and budget and all of those things, those are things that the vision map guides us, and we keep all of that in mind to make that more and more and more possible, so that it's easier to do, right? And it's natural, it's a natural part of who we are. It's exciting.
And it definitely takes us out of our comfort zone of all the past things that the way we've always done it. Is.
Well, we don't want to keep doing it though.
It's honest right now.
So you stole a little bit of my thunder, Dr. Blair, because I was going to say something along the same lines of what you were saying, but I do want to just kind of take a moment and thank all of you for the work that you're doing in the district with our students, because that's why we're all here. And I do want to just take it back a little farther than at the beginning of this work, because I know Dr. O'Connell and John stepped up to the task when the community called for the specific formation of the stakeholders group. But I have known that this work is always going on in this district with Miss Horton and her, bringing different cultural aspects to her music classes. And the books that we've had in our classrooms and the courses that we've taught, or the different topics that have been covered in some of the courses in the high school. I think for those of us that have been here for a long time, we know that this work has always been going on because fundamentally you as teachers care about your students and you want to make sure that, they see themselves in the work that they're doing and everything that they're learning. And we're fortunate enough that the materials have come along that allow you to do that work, right? So I wanted to say that. I also wanted to say, I love seeing this room full, and I would hope, going forward, we would have more community participation, because I, like you, hear a lot from the community about like different aspects of like, what's the district doing, or it's not transparent with respect to this. But I would say to you, along the lines of what you're saying, this work happens at every single one of these meetings. This work happens when Michael asks for Miss Ellenson's position, right, during a budget a couple years ago. This work happens as you talk about your community aid. That's gonna happen at a future meeting. And it's not labeled as DEI work, but it does impact our students to that respect. Or when Dr. Blair asks for iPads to be held at welcome centers so that we can hit translate buttons, so that we can communicate with all of our parents, so the parents can communicate with the people who have their children probably more hours than most of us see our kids every single day, right? So I do, as I work with you and Anamika on the communications committee, going forward, agree that maybe we need to talk about some of it, but some of it feels very artificial to package as like, look at what we're doing with respect to this, because this is the work that you all do every single day to ensure that our students are all getting the best education that they can get, and that we are living in this, like, what school can be world. So thank you for that. I do have some questions, with respect to, recent events that have happened in our community and the world. I'd just like to know, and I'm happy, because I don't want to put you on the spot, to maybe have the administration put this in a weekly or something like that. But with respect to our LGBTQ plus students, and the supports that we offer their families, I would love to know what we're doing with respect to that. And I would also love to know what we're doing with respect to addressing any, anti-Semitism that our students are feeling, especially this year. And I'll let,
We'd be happy to,
yeah,
we can gather that and put that.
absolutely, yeah,
Sure. No, happy to
offline.
do that.
I'd love that. Thank you so much. And thank you again for everything that you're doing. All of you.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
No one else left.
Well, I just wanted to take a moment to thank each of you for coming out tonight, to meet with us, to speak with us, and have these conversations. It's so exciting to see so many different faces here, and so many community members in the room to witness these conversations taking place. It's really exciting for me, and I know, in speaking with board colleagues in other areas, that this isn't something that happens in everyone's boardroom. So thank you for taking that thoughtful risk of coming in and putting yourselves out here and showing us how much you care and how dedicated and how excited you are to be with our kids every day, because it really just means the world to us. So thank you very much. Thank you. And that was just the first part of our work session. So I will give you all a moment to clear out, and we will welcome our architects tomorrow.
Hey, I'm Johnny, go buy lunch.
I'm turning over to you.
where we are in terms of SED approvals, and kind of the broader scope of the project. We thought it'd be an opportune time for the board and community to get an update. So turn it over to the team.
So thank you very much for having us, and good evening, everyone. Yeah, this is another opportunity. We'd like to come to you regularly, to give you a status update on where we are with the overall project. So we have a little presentation for you. I promise we'll try and make it as quick and painless as possible, because I'm sure, there's a lot of people who are interested in moving on. Tonight, as part of the agenda, we'd like to talk a little bit about what we've completed so far, right? Some exciting stuff that's already happened. We want to talk about what projects are currently with SED and design and where they are and what the plans are for them. We also want to talk a little bit about some SED timelines that have gotten a little longer than had been originally planned for early on, and some of the effects that might have. What we did is we ran some scenarios, if-thens, right? Making some assumptions of timelines. So what we'd like to do is kind of go over a lot of the good things, a couple of the things that are that you should be aware of that's creating some issues for us, and then open it up to some questions, okay? All right. I'll jump right into the work that took place over the summer of 2023. We had two projects. One was stormwater drainage upgrades at CET. That project has been completed very successfully. It seems to be working for what it was intended. So we're very happy to get that one behind us. The other thing that took place over the summer was part of the $45.5 million bond referendum, and that was the roofing projects. So just to give you a little history on the roofing projects, we had not originally planned on doing roofing projects over the summer of 2023. But we identified that there was an opportunity to try and get that project done, and the architect worked very quickly to turn a set of drawings around and get it approved by SED. And we were able to we bid it out. We were able to get some of the projects done over the summer of 2023. The second half of the project, we rebid it out because some of the numbers were a little higher, having to do with the bid time, right? Being a little late towards the summer. So we rebid the project, and it came in much more favorable. And as a matter of fact, I think it was on the board agenda for approval tonight, was that roofing project. So looking forward to getting that project started right away, assuming that the board has made a decision to move forward. So we're really excited about that as well.
Can I just add, Kevin, that we are pleased that that project is tracking ahead of schedule. So we're able to get a big chunk done this summer and is also currently under budget. So, a good start out of the gate on the project.
Words we enjoy hearing.
Yes, I'm gonna say it every time, as long as I can say it.
I like to use the words on budget.
That's an exact.
It is. Just as important, yeah. So far, we're tracking very well. All right, the second package of three is the athletic fields and security package. That consists of all the work down the play fields at Spencer, as well as a CET and some PVC playground upgrades. We have been working very closely, the whole team, right? Looking for ways to try and advance some of these projects, even though we know that we're having some issues with SED and their performance with reviews. So we reached out to a number of vendors and who had helped us go through a pricing exercise. We've identified some vendors, a vendor that we'd like to pursue with this project. And it looks very good. We're just gonna start in the next couple of months, finalizing the design and developing that with the contractor, and then coming up with the final price. So we're hoping that, the next couple of months, we'll be able to present to you a recommendation for that project as well. We do think that is still tracking for a June 3rd start. So, yeah, it's a real, I think it's getting real close to a real project, so it's really excited and I hope you're ready. It's a big one. There's a lot of things going on down there. Okay?
So just if I can add just a couple points on that project. I think when we came to you in the summer, we talked about this review process at SED had changed from the point at which we had the referendum to when we got into design. They specifically eliminated the third-party review. And what that meant was SED at one point in time was outsourcing reviews to licensed engineers and architects in the state. And they could basically load shift capacity out. So when the queue got high, you could opt into a third-party review process. And at the high end, that might take 2 to 3 months to get out of SED. On the short end, it could be 4 weeks. We're currently looking at a queue of 24 weeks at SED. So the queue means that's when the project is administratively logged in, which is usually like a week after you submit it. And then that's when they pick it up. So it could take another 2 to 4 weeks after that point to get a permit or get an approval in hand. So that's a pretty dramatic shift. We knew that was happening. We talked about that in June. We were able to get the field project to SED a little sooner than the rest of the project. And have been, as Kevin said, been working with cooperative vendors to try to mitigate any impact on getting the permit and then hence impact on bidding timeframe. So we have received initial comments this week on that project from SED and responded to the first round of architectural comments, which hopefully will be the last round of architectural comments today. And then we'll receive engineering comments in the next, hopefully, couple days. So we're in good shape to get a permit. And then it'll just be finalizing the contract. So that, as Kevin said, that's looking great for a summer start.
Yeah, yeah. So very exciting. And all that is as planned, right? And we're still moving and tracking and of course, from time to time, we have to adjust. And so far, everything's been working out really well. So we anticipate that project moving forward for the summer, of course, with the roofing project as well. And then the next stage is what we're calling package 3 of 3, which is all of the remaining work, right? That's the program and the infrastructure work that remains. So couple things I just want to emphasize. The both package 2 and package 3 went out to SED. I believe package 2 went out somewhere around the late August, beginning of September, and then package 2
late July, early August.
Late July, early August,
Yeah.
ahead of schedule. So originally on our original plan, we had everything going up to SED on or about the 21st of September. And we broke the package into 2, separating out Spencer Field and the various other projects in the other districts. The architect team did a great job of getting that program out earlier, ahead of what was originally intended. And we're gonna benefit from that. The benefit of that is the fact that we're still have an opportunity to do that project this summer. Okay, so great job there, and great foresight. The remaining balance of the program and infrastructure work is still up at SED. Its pending review is, as of the 10th, we were approximately 380 projects from there picking it up, right, and reviewing them. And so what we had originally intended to start looking at bidding the projects in January is now anticipated to be sometime around April 1. And that's right now, to be honest with you, is our best guess at this time. Could it go a little bit better? Possibly. Could it go a little later? Also possible. And so what we did was we put together a couple of, if this happens, then what happens, right? So that the board is aware of how this impacts your schedule and your work. There are a lot of different things that it impacts. We talked about the timeline. Walter just talked about the timeline. It's right now at 24 weeks, about 10 weeks later than we had originally anticipated. So the things that we planned on doing, the bidding process, the mid-January into mid-February, and then the awarding of that, giving enough time to do all those projects, it all fell in line really nicely. It's not you know, it's not quite that anymore. So, I want to talk a little about the if-then schedules with you guys.
Can I just add a couple things to it? So our concern is, that if SE puts us out with a permit later in the spring, we run into the same difficulties we ran into with the roof the first time around, where we're bidding it very close to the summer. And what typically happens is the contractor participation goes down, and their kind of level of aggressive pricing, so to speak, goes away. Because typically the contractors that work on schools will have their schedule booked for the summer. The other issue is you are not alone in this issue. This is a statewide concern. It's impacting everybody. And we're going to see a number of projects pushed to that late spring timeframe. So our concern is making sure we get the most competitive, kind of value-driven bidding environment for the district. So it's something we're monitoring. Nothing's fait complete here in terms of when we bid it, but it's just our going concern. And then the second piece is, if the bidding period gets very close to the summer and the award period, there isn't enough time to procure some of the materials and equipment that are necessary for the planned work over the summer. It doesn't mean that something can't happen, that there is, it just will impact what we can do. So those are our big concerns, broad brush.
Yes, thank you. Well said. That's exactly why we're here today, is to describe those conditions to you. There's a lot of balls up in the air, right? Takes a lot of parts to get to construction. You're absolutely right. I don't want to repeat everything you just said, but what you said is true. The market, what it can bear, the contractors, what they're interested in. There are a lot of other school districts here in Westchester that is tracking almost the exact same timeline as your own. So there's a lot of interest out there. And then the procurement of long lead items. So even if we have an opportunity to bid these projects and award them in, say, mid-May or early June, can we physically get the materials on site to do a summer project? So these are all things that we have to evaluate as we get more information, and then we'll share it with the group. We talk about this almost weekly now, right? For an hour and a half, 2-hour meeting, constantly trying to figure out more ways to get past and move forward and push, but in a way that most benefits the district financially, but and benefits you in terms of the actual work and being able to also educate your students when these things take place as well. So we're trying to take all that into consideration. So we ran a couple of scenarios that we wanted to just go over with you briefly. This is the original project schedule. You've seen this before in a previous meeting. In here we have, so orange is you can see summer 23 is construction that's already taken place, the stormwater and the roofing projects. Over here, orange in the summer of 24 is the project that you just awarded tonight. So that's on track for that. Those two projects were originally scheduled for summer 24 and 25. So we actually advanced those things. So I think that's a good credit to do the architects. Then you see in the blue, design development, anticipated SED review time. We had 14 weeks in there, which at the time that was good. That was a good amount of time. It has since obviously adjusted, giving you a bid time in January. Working Spencer Field separately from the auditorium, and then some infrastructure work, various other things that'll take place inside all the buildings over the summer 24, and then the cafeteria construction and various other fields, and the PVC field, and you'll see we actually moved that up. But that was the original thought, right? How we're going to spread all this out to get the work done. This is where we think we are now. You'll notice a couple of things, and we discussed earlier, the program split in two, the athletics and the infrastructure program. The athletic, both was supposed to be up to SED by the 21st of September. The architect has meet or exceeded those dates. the athletic, and because of that, the athletic field, is, even with the anticipated push of the review time period, we still believe we have time to get that out on the street, awarded, and, into construction here for the early month of June. So that's still, as we said earlier, very positive. The one that we're gonna struggle with a little bit is now moving on to the auditorium construction, which was originally planned to start right after school lets out at the end of June. The bid period now has pushed into this April-May time period. Right now, as we sit here today, is what we are anticipating. And what that does is shortens down the time for us to actually get materials on site. So we think that instead of this starting right at when kids leave, it might push a little bit into the summer. Well, I think we'll still get it to start in the summer, but it's gonna push in the back end. We were hoping to have it done right around the January, or early January of 25. And we're anticipating that may need to stretch out to March. Okay, so 2.5, 3 months on this side kind of pushes to 2.5, 3 months on the back side. Okay. And here in this scenario, you could actually see that we have pushed, PVC field was originally planned to do in 2025. It's actually been incorporated into the plan with Spencer and CET. So we've actually moved that up because we think we can do it. So you see what we're doing? We're trying to move things around so we can take advantage of the time to get some of the work done, even though we have some setbacks in some other areas, okay? Likewise, the cafeteria and iLab was pushed out a little bit further past the summer. We said, let's try and start it a little sooner. These are the conversations that we've been having. Or I should say, in the fall of 2024, and finish it for school opening in the summer of 2025. Right, so in this scenario, that's the plan. The only thing that is very hard for us right now to predict is the other various miscellaneous work that's taking place throughout the district. As this bid date pushes closer and closer, some of the work here may have to shift to another summer. Because it's summer work, can't really do it during the school year. There's a tremendous amount of work that's planned for this summer of 2025. Okay, so this moving some of that stuff here is gonna be a lot of impact in the school district. So we have to look closely at how we can best, keep that in control so that we can get the schools back in line and cleaned and shined up real nice for a school opening there, okay? So this is great if we have all this approval by that 4/15, somewhere the first 2 weeks of April. All right, what happens if it isn't that time, right? So this is not a bad scenario. It doesn't really change the end date that much. We're jockeying some things around, right? So here's another scenario. Let's say it goes past that second week of April in the approval process. Now we're running into a lot of these concerns that Walter was talking about before. Not as many contractors out there bidding on projects. The ones that are bidding on them are not from around here. New York City, New Jersey, Connecticut. An increase in cost because these projects are closer to the summer and they've already accumulated some work. So maybe if they get it, good. If they don't get it, it's okay too. You get a lot of that. And then the physical lead times of getting materials on site that impacts your construction. So in this particular scenario, we think that if we may have to move the bidding from that May, June time period to after the summer. There's some advantages to that. Contractors are finishing up their summer work and typically they're looking for work at that time period, so we want to take advantage of that. It opens up the opportunity to allow a little bit more space in between bidding and when we actually need materials on site so that we take care of the long lead item issue. Okay. But you can see some of the impacts here. In some cases, like the various district-wide work may need to shift an entire year. Okay? The cafeteria lab and high construction may need to shift to take, it's basically that same time period, starting in November and finishing for the school year. It's the same thing, just shifted a year, right? So I don't want this to be doom and gloom. This may never happen. But we want to make sure that the board is aware that there is the potential for it to happen. So that you are, so that, and I want you to know that we are working very, very closely together to try and minimize all these impacts, move things around, make things happen, push, push. But we're also thinking about your educational process and the cost of things, right? This scenario could potentially have some cost involved. Right? As you know, as time goes by, costs escalate, they keep going up, and they're not costs that we anticipated in the original plan. So the question is, what do we have to do with the program in order for us to make sure that we can realize this project? And so that may be a conversation you have to have for another day. It's not for today, but that might be a conversation we have to have. So, do you have any relationships, anybody in the state? And can stand on a desk and scream, help me, help me.
That I can do.
Pull out the stops, man. I can tell you that there are a lot of there are many school districts who are in the exact same position that you are, and quite honestly, we're going around to all of our school districts and explaining to them the same thing. All right. It's a potentially a real issue that we just want to make sure that the board is aware of. We're not throwing up red flags. We're not saying there's an emergency here. We just want you to be aware of the possibilities of these things happening. Okay, and that's the whole presentation that we have tonight. Keep in mind, lots of good things happening. Don't forget, you're all cheerful over there. The mood is kind of settled in a little bit, I can tell. But we've done a lot of really good things here. A lot of good things are coming. But there are some potential issues here that the board needs to be aware of to be continued. I'm sure that before summer, we will have another conversation here in front of you. And we're hoping that we can give you much better news as to where we are and where things are going. And what adjustments we made in order to continue moving this program forward. Yeah. All right.
Questions? I have a question for DHC. Does this affect like our ability to ban? Is that the bans?
No,
award.
we can work through that. We have presented a few scenarios to our, to capital markets and fiscal advisors. And it will change our banning plan.
Yes.
But it still works within our tax neutral proposal that was approved by the community in December of 22.
And then with the potential of extending it into 2026, 2025, 26, you had factored in, hadn't you? Like, not like that, it would be different.
No, we had planned, for 25.
But you had factored in increases in
Escalation
Yes.
and construction costs, yes.
but not to this extent.
I don't believe so. I think we're gonna have to do a bit of value engineering and, be looking at some things if we do push out to 26.
Okay.
And I will say, we did have preliminary discussions with our building leaders to discuss the implications of, is this doable for certain projects to exist during school hours and during the school year? And every principal said, we will do whatever it takes to make it happen. So there's a willingness there to kind of piecemeal projects that we can start up a little bit earlier. Remember, we only have technically 2 months really to do this, and we can't move forward with anything without building permits from the state.
Josh?
So I'd like to refer an item to the advocacy committee. I would like to request that the advocacy committee propose a resolution to NISBA for the next NISBA conference. That would be a resolution calling on the SED to reform their review procedures.
Actually, I had to sort of piggyback on that. You may have seen LHEC, the Lower Hudson Education Coalition, actually have recently at the beginning of January sent out a letter to SED regarding the reinstatement of third-party review, the third-party review process. And I think that there were some districts that sort of that were are part of LHEC that co-signed that letter, that have also sent other letters on. So that was actually something that I wanted to refer to advocacy to see if you guys wanted to take a look at that, to see if I think it would make sense for us as a district to send a similar letter.
Yeah, we
as
did
well.
talk about, we actually talked about, because it was a little off topic for the committee that met this weekend, but we did actually talk about doing exactly this, because it seems like there's an opportunity for us to get our voices and get the formal request made, and then also call the people, you know, as you said, call who we know, so we have people that we know, we'll call them.
When was third-party review rescinded?
March of
March of 23.
Yeah.
With notice made in February of 23. So
Yeah.
very short notice on the termination of the program.
And it wasn't like a final termination, this is over for good, it was a little unclear as to whether or not it was
Gonna come
going
back
to
and
be
practice.
just for like a shortened suspended period.
And do we know why? What were the reasons for
The information that I was given verbally by the SED coordinator, facilities planning coordinator, was that Oswego BOCES was unable to maintain that program without incurring a loss, operational loss.
It was an Oswego BOCES program that.
It was administered by Oswego BOCES, and they apparently claim to be losing money on it. But you would think a rate adjustment might solve that issue.
And yet there's been no increase in staffing at the SED side for.
Well, they are advertising
Right.
positions, but it is.
I know they've been advertising for a while, but yeah, to my understanding, there hasn't been.
They have not added staff. In their defense, it is a challenging time to find technical staff because of the market, and it's not a terribly competitive position for somebody with experience that they're requiring.
And if you're positioned to do any moonlighting.
No.
I have another theory on that I would love to discuss with you offline. But, yeah.
So Walter and Kevin, who in the SED should we follow up with? Or is it a department within it? Is there an office?
Yeah, I think the SED is beholden to the assembly, so you may want to talk to your assembly representative.
Yeah.
No, but specifically, what am I asking? Is what I wanna know.
Oh,
Can you
Got
know?
them on the phone.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know, I'll ask the question, but what am I asking for? Am I asking for, can you
Can we jump the
speak,
line?
yeah, applying for the Courtney Harmon project? Is it,
Yeah.
like, what is?
yeah, I don't think calling SED and asking for prioritization of your project will be effective, or because we've tried that.
We've seen some form letter responses
Yeah.
that basically says they can't, that in the order that they're received, they will review.
Yeah, this is gonna have to come from the commissioner.
Yeah.
So it's the folks at facilities planning really don't have the ability to change this internally. Our understanding, they are posting, they have approved positions they cannot fill. And they're.
An incredible backlog.
But the person, if you wanna talk to somebody at facilities planning, the coordinator, Sarah Metz.
No, I'm not gonna talk, I'm gonna ask somebody to talk. But I wanna be able to point them in the right direction.
Yeah, the SED facilities planning coordinator, Sarah Metz.
I think it's, got Leavenworth on this?
That's what we're talking about doing via potentially an advocacy letter, but I think individually as well, if there's ways for that conversation. And certainly.
Did you say Dana?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just a brief history on the review process. In around 2018 or 17, before the third-party review was instituted, the review queue was 52 weeks. And it was a very similar effort with SCD to remediate this, and that was the solution, third party, because the dollar values of lost kind of value driven to the districts they're enormous. And in particular, the current construction climate has escalation of 6 to 8% conservatively. So when you lose 6 to 8% of your project every 12 months, right, in delivered value, those are real dollars across the state. And it doesn't reduce the total cost of your project, it just reduces what you get.
That is horrible.
Yeah.
Bond for a fixed amount.
Yeah.
You can't bond with escalation.
You can't, no, you can't do cost plus.
You also can't maintain your buildings appropriately or do any kind of, changes or plan for them. And if you don't work within a system that allows you to do that effectively.
It is very frustrating. I will say, Kevin and John from Triton have done a really nice job of trying to be in front of this, understanding what the circumstances are and weighing the business decisions that will be in front of us as we approach an inevitable bid period, optimizing that bid period, understanding the market and finding the right time to do it.
I just appreciate your transparency with respect to this and just, informing us.
Important.
What
It's
it is.
important.
It absolutely.
Sometimes we have to tell you things that you need to hear, not what you want to hear, and this is one of those conditions, right?
I mean, there's some nice options in here.
Yeah.
Next one isn't that bad, option two is.
Yeah, and don't walk out of the meeting thinking that option two is where we are right
No,
now.
everything's possible at this point.
We're not there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also what you don't see on the day-to-day is conversations that we're having with the district team. I mean, I'm on with Brad every other day.
It's a team.
I'm talking with John at Triton. We're saying,
It's a team effort.
wait, we have this here, let's move this here, let's move this here. So it's a constantly evolving process. As we shift along, we just keep moving things to try and make it work, so.
I would just add that, certainly there's anxiousness in the uncertainty, right? But there is certainty in knowing that we have the right people in the room doing this work, right? And the team you have in front of you here and for the districts and in Denise and Brad, right? There's no question, these are the right people.
Thank you.
So thank you.
I'm very proud to be here.
Yeah, I
Thank
think
you.
they caught the croak and bug.
Are you tigers?
Are you tigers? It's a 2-hour meeting.
Ooh, my
It's-
teeth black.
It's stuck to my shirt at this point.
Does anybody else have any other questions for,
Thank you for always staying so late for us.
No.
Yes, thank you. Really, really
We
appreciate it.
understand. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Look forward to our next update.
Next up.
Yes.
All right. With that then, recommended action that the board adjourn at 10:19 PM.
So moved.
Second.
Third. All in favor? Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carries. Thank you very much. Have a lovely evening, everyone.